Okay, so we are going to do something pretty cool today. I'm outside of the Amerikanische Bibliothek, the American Library here in Karlsruhe, and we're going to join our squad. Hi Eva.
Hello, and my name is Annemarie.
Hi Annemarie, and finally here we have the person who organizes everything. Hi Tom.
Tonight we have 4 wonderful people here to discuss a short story by Chekhov, Anton Chekhov, the famous Russian playwright and short story writer.
So, the story we will discuss today is a short called The Student. This was the one Chekhov identified as his favorites among his works, so we're really looking at the best of the best. Now, how you interpret the story is up to you, which is what makes it so fascinating because it can mean completely different things, and the interpretations can vary not just slightly, but by 180 degrees. So do tell me what you make of this. I mean, I took it to mean something very different from Tom. So here's the format of this video. I'm going to read out some excerpts from The Student. I mean, it's a 4-page short, so it's pretty concise, and we're going to pick bits and pieces anyway to keep the video short. Of course, if you'd like to read it for yourself, even better. Now you can skip this ahead into the video, if that's the case. But after I finish reading, I will talk very briefly about how I interpret the story, then we will see what Tom thinks. Prepare to get your mind blown by 2 completely contrasting viewpoints.
What do you have to do?
Just have to hold it.
To hold it.
Have to hold it. But you have to make sure that I'm focused.
Okay. Yeah, okay, yeah.
The Student. The weather was fine and calm at first. Thrushes were calling out in the nearby bogs. Something was plaintively droning, sounding as if the air were blowing into a bottle. Ivan Velikopolsky, a student of the Theological Academy and the son of a reader, was returning from a hunt, making his way down a path by the flooded meadow. It seemed to him that the invading cold was intruding in upon the harmony and order in everything, and that nature herself was uneasy. Therefore, darkness was setting in more quickly than it had to. There was only the glow from a fire that was burning in the widow's garden near the river. Otherwise, from about 3 miles all around the countryside, village, everything was sunk entirely into the cold evening gloom. The student remembered how, as he was leaving the house, his mother was sitting barefoot on the porch steps, polishing the samovar, and how his father was lying on the stove and coughing. There was nothing to eat at home because it was Great Friday, and the student was terribly hungry. The garden was called the widow's garden because it was kept by 2 widows, a mother and her daughter. The fire crackled and it poured off heat, lighting up the tilled earth all around it. The widow Vasilisa, a tall, plump, old woman, wearing a man's cut-off sheepskin coat, was standing near, gazing thoughtfully into the fire. Her daughter Lucaria, small, pockmarked, with a somewhat stupid face, sat on the ground washing a pot and some spoons. Obviously, they had just finished supper. Suddenly, men's voices could be heard. They belonged to some local workers who were watering down their horses along the river. So, at this point, the student basically goes on to tell them a story about Peter and Jesus.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
So according to the Christian account, Peter was one of the disciples of Jesus who kind of abandoned him one night. Basically turned his back to him, just went his way. He obviously repented, so there is some more stuff to that story which I'm not going to delve into the details of. So now Ivan Velikopolsky is recounting the story to the widows, and when he finishes, this is what happens. Vasilisa's smile faded into a sob, and large tears dripped down her cheeks. But Lucaria, still immovably staring at the student, flushed, and her expression became strained, like someone holding back great pain. The lonely fire blinked in the darkness, and next to it, some people could be seen. The student thought again about Vasilisa's crying and her daughter's uneasiness. Obviously, what he told the widows about those events of 20 centuries ago had some relationship to the present, to both those women, probably to that deserted village, to himself, and to all those people. Suddenly joy stirred in his spirit. He even stood still momentarily to catch his breath. The past, he thought, is joined to the present by an unbroken chain of events, proceeding one out of the other. It seemed to him that he had just seen both ends of the chain. As he shook one end of the chain, he was able to touch the other. The student crossed over to the other side of the river by ferry, and then ascended a hill and looked at his native village in the west, where the sunset's cold, blood-red glow stretched in a narrow band across the edge of the horizon. He thought that the truth and beauty which guided human life there in the garden and in the courtyard of the high priest continued without interruption to this very day. The feeling of youth, health, strength, he was only 22 years old, and an inexpressibly sweet expectation of an unknown and mysterious happiness overtook him, little by little. Life then seemed to him to be ecstatic, miraculous, and full of meaning. So really, to me, those words are so profound. You can feel the temperature change in the course of the narrative. It starts off with finger-numbing winter, where Ivan feels like he's lost and gloomy. And then it then moves on to him developing hope, this sort of inner warmth, feeling strongly connected to history, to his past, and feeling awed by that link that goes back thousands of years. And now let's take a look at a kind of unrelated video, but it does touch upon the same exact topic, by Jordan Peterson.
You're an old thing. Your physical form is 3.5 billion years old. And you're the process of all that, all the death and struggling that went along the entire course of that 3.5 billion years, is you carry that with you. And then on top of that, inside you is the consequence of the entire cultural history of complex life. That's all inside you too. And then on top of that, some of that's articulated more or less. Some of it's acted out, dramatized, represented in fiction and that sort of thing. And then some of it's articulated. But there's way more at the bottom than is fully articulated. And so God only knows what you're up to. And then you might say, well, who cares? Well, the problem with that is that you care, because first of all, that's the definition of caring. And second of all, that determines the way that you'll move through your life. And everything that happens to you that's good or evil or good or bad is going to be a consequence of the manifestation of that ethic in the world.
Okay, this is what Tom has to say.
The two women are prostitutes.
Are they?
Oh, how? Wow, I could never.
That's the clue about real life. He's going on about Peter and Jesus. Women are crying not because they think now, they're crying because their lives are absolutely miserable, because they don't want to survive by being prostitutes. But the beauty is, the beauty of the description of nature at the beginning, the very bleak view of life, that nothing will change, okay? And then the women living this horrific life, because they're the widows, you see. Imagine being a widow in Russia at the end of the 19th century. There's no pension, no widow pension, there's nothing. And they had to survive as best they could. So it's the contrast between idealism, the young Juden priest, okay? The magnificent description of the surrounding countryside. You can imagine a small village in the middle of Russia. The peasants, the local landlord, probably Prince Lebowski, and men coming to the women for service. So and yet there's also something very intense about the description of the biblical scene of Jesus being, but who is betrayed in life? Human beings are betrayed by misery and injustice. And yet there's still this burning desire, self-deception, that there will be a better world, okay? Yeah? And maybe even the women really feel deep down, there might be a better world, there might be something better than the life. So you see, Sheffield is wonderful at getting across how people deceive themselves. They get full of idea, and then, but they're not looking at what's happening in front of their face, okay? It's tremendous, and the more I read it, the more I get this terrible feeling of suffering, and also the beauty of language, and also the sheer beauty of the description. And yet, there's something about this has gone on for over 2,000 years. It's the story of betrayal, of human beings being betrayed by poverty and misery, and yet there's still hope that there might be better times. And you see that in Chekhov's plays. The characters are hopeless, but they think that life will be better in 100 years' time. You know, they're just dreamers, you know, and they're not seeing what's going on around them. You know? So he's completely unaware. That these women probably know this story by heart.
Exactly, that's what I was wondering.
He's getting high on repeating it. He's getting a high from his religious emotion. That's a personal view. Now Maria, the wonderful Russian woman who comes here, she disagreed with me. She felt that it was a very religious sort of story. Now, I don't think so at all.
Now this could be interpreted as a story about religion, and feeling inspired and awed by religious beliefs. Alternatively, it could as well be a story about the naivety of a young man with colored glasses and tunnel vision. Personally, I thought it was the former. That is, Ivan, when he looks back at our shared historical narrative, begins to feel more grounded, more secure, and mysteriously happy in his worldview. Now Tom takes that to mean that Ivan just has his head in the clouds. I also see how Tom would disagree. Then again, Chekhov did remark to his brother about this story that it is a manifesto to optimism. What do you think?